800-570-6630. 800-570-6630. That's 800-570-6630. Offers require credit qualification, 24-month commitment, early termination fee, and e-auto pay. Restrictions apply. Call for details.
There's a new food show sheriff in town, Podna. Trey's Chowdown Podcast Live will feature celebrity chefs and pitmasters with celebrity mixologists with creative cocktail menus from distilleries statewide. We'll have farmers, ranchers, wildlife experts, fishermen, and more, all for the culinary world and the foodies. Live from the Spoony Studios on the iHeartRadio platform, Trey's Chowdown Podcast Live. And here we are, folks, back for another day for Trey's Chowdown Live on Friday. Hey, man, I got that. I didn't hit the button the first time. Y'all were supposed to do that. All right, well, we're here. All those guys are laughing at me in the studio. All right, well, we're happy. We're here today with Joe Risky from Fort Worth, from Joe Risky's Barbecue. Joe,
how you doing?
And I'm gonna be playing real quick. That's Joe Risky's Craft Barbecue.
That's right.
It's located
at the Wildacre. Yeah, the Wildacre Brewery, which is the old ranch style bean plant.
Right.
Which
that's why I tell everybody that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I'm at, and come see me.
Yeah. So we're gonna start off now. We're gonna go where he's from and kind of all his experience, and I'm excited to have you here. And I appreciate you coming in, Joe.
No problem.
All right, so let's get started. So, Where did you grow up, Joe? Where are you from?
Well, I grew up. I lived here until about in Fort Worth, actually, like Saginaw area, till I was in third grade, and my parents got divorced when I was younger, and my mom remarried, and he was the principal of Ballsville High School, Bert Weems.
Okay.
So he took a job in Red Oak. If you know where Red Oak is. Okay, so it was nothing in Red Oak. No. So he moved us from here down to Red Oak. He became like the assistant superintendent and principal. And so I lived down there until right out of high school, and then I started. But I was always here off and on all the time.
Saginaw back in those times was a ways from Fort Worth.
Well, yeah,
and Red Oak was a long way.
Oh,
and now Saginaw is kind of part of Fort Worth, and Red Oak's gotten big.
Oh, yeah. Well, if we're moving from Saginaw, my cousin lived there, and we would, hey, Joe's coming down there, and I'd ride my bike down to his house. Well, then we moved to Red Oak. It was a culture shock. I mean, it was bar ditches.
Wasn't no bike riding going on down there.
No curb and gutter. We had to go to gasoline engines. We had to have a go-kart to travel between everybody's house. So I grew up there and had a lot of fun and kind of lived in the country, which is a great way to.
It is a great way to grow
and
up.
it was looking back and raising my kids now, knowing it was a great way to live.
Sure.
We didn't experience a lot of things that the city had. We would come to Fort Worth a lot because my dad still lived here, obviously, and I'd spend time with him. My cousins lived here. All our relatives lived here. We were the only ones that lived there.
Right.
So I was here a lot of times, and then probably right out of high school, I was going to junior college. Got in a little trouble.
Don't we all? Didn't we all?
Got pulled over in Dallas. Food related. I was coming from Lone Star Oyster Bar, and I was going back over to Addison, and I was going too fast down the toll road.
Oh yeah,
or 635.
635.
And
that must have been new at that time.
Yeah, and I might have been drinking.
Yeah, might have
been. I was underage. Anyway, long story short, that was a bit of a stumble.
Yeah.
And so from there, I moved back. My brother and my sister lived here. And I moved back here and started to live with them and work for my dad.
Okay.
And that's the second time I started working for my dad. But I moved back, and that's when I moved back. And since then, so probably 96, 97. I've been here ever since.
So the first time you started working for your dad, how old? And your dad is the Risky's Barbecue.
Yeah, Jim Risky.
Jim Risky's Barbecue.
So I'm a fourth generation Risky.
Right. And Risky's was started in 1927.
Yeah, on the north side of Fort Worth. Yeah.
Okay.
So I first started working for my dad when I was about 16.
Did you like it at that time?
Yeah, so to give you a little back history on that, we had the main store, which is a grocery store.
Right.
We did deli in the back.
Store, I like
right,
it, yeah.
right. It's on Hazel Avenue. So he did that, and then he partnered up with some guys. Do you remember the old Chuck Wagon hamburger joints?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So the
Chuck Wagon. Yeah.
So Chuck Wagon goes out. My dad's good buddy was like their head maintenance and he was employed by them.
Right.
And they said, hey, why don't we buy some of these old Chuck Wagons and turn them into a quote unquote Riskies to go. And so he did this in the early 80s with a guy, and the gentleman's name was Buddy Isabel. Don't know much about Buddy, but that was my dad's partner on the deal. So he started doing these to go. So he had there was one on Mansfield Highway. They were all over. I don't really remember. I was young, but he
didn't care at that time.
Right. He had these little to-goes, and then the partnership didn't work out, whatever. He kind of went back to the main store and kept doing that. Well, then I guess right around in there, my aunt had a car accident. She lived in Highland Park.
Okay.
And she had a real bad car accident. And so she was in the hospital with head trauma. Right. So he would go to Dallas every day to visit her. So in the process of doing that, and maybe, let's let traffic die down, have a few drinks.
Okay.
Started hanging out a little bit in Dallas.
Okay.
He ran into a guy named Richard Chase.
Okay.
You familiar with Richard Chase?
Yes.
Richard Chase started Dick's Last Resorts, but also was a biographer. He's done a lot of crazy stuff. Yeah, real crazy.
Yeah.
So he meets Richard Chase, or Dick Chase. He says, hey, I'm starting this little restaurant with a guy, which I think was Tommy Alverson's, and it was Tommy Alverson's What's Up Saloon, maybe. Don't quote me on that, but it was over off of Greenville Avenue.
Okay.
And so he said, hey, would you mind smoking some beef back ribs? My dad was like, they're trash. Well, no, I'm not. Well, just do it. We're doing this deal. We're going to have them as like appetizers for the bar, da-da-da-da-da. So he said, okay, well, I'm over here every day, so I'll smoke them, put them in the truck, bring them over here. You'll meet me. We'll drop them off. So that's how the beef rib for Risky's Barbecue started.
Oh, wow.
So in the process of doing that, Chase talks him into starting a restaurant in the West End.
Okay.
And it was right across from the Palm. Dick's was on that back corner.
Right.
The Palm was there, and there was a building in between. Well,
wait, hang on. Dick's and Palm are both gone now, right?
Yeah. Maybe the Palm's there. I don't know.
No, Palm's gone. They're closed.
Okay,
so they're
gone.
Summer. They're
gone.
They're
not closed. I think there's Palms elsewhere.
Yeah, just that location.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So the Palm's there. That's there. He talks him into starting this restaurant. And they called it Paris, Texas.
Okay.
Is what they call it. That's what they called it, Paris, Texas. And it was kind of a barbecue, and it might have had a little bit of French influence. It was kind of a weird deal. Yeah. So he goes to do that. Next thing you know, there's a big, nasty lawsuit. Richard talked him into it. Chase talked him into it. He gets going. Those Dallas boys punch that Fort Worth boy right in the nose. He ends up in a big lawsuit. All of his money's tied up. He's like, what am I going to do? Somehow it all filters down, and he's able to turn it into a Risky's Barbecue.
Okay.
So that was the very first sit-down, full-service Risky's Barbecue.
Okay.
So that started whenever Jerry bought the Cowboys. It was right in that period because Jerry and all them would come in there.
Okay.
And they were, nobody knew who they were. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was probably
everybody was just getting started.
Right. So that was probably in the late 80s, early 90s.
No, late 80s.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he ran through that, and that became very successful.
Right.
Well, so about that time, I graduated high school in 94. So back in the early 90s, when I turned 16, that was my first job.
Right.
Was to go work down at the West End.
Right.
Okay. And so
so you were there, you were working in the West End at 16.
Right.
Oh, wow.
That was the first job I had.
That's a different place back then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So there was a lot of things I learned about service industry.
You're very impressionable at 16. Especially because back in those days, restaurant operations were way different.
Oh.
You get away with a lot more than you get away with now.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. That hashtag me too. It was wow. So anyway, so I'm 16 driving myself down to downtown Dallas from Red Oak. I was a food
every
runner.
day, or just when you work?
Well, when I worked, which I don't remember exactly when I worked, but I know it was weekends for sure. I think I worked in I worked whenever I could. Summer I worked.
Times, probably.
Summer I worked in the mornings.
Right.
And so started working down there, and that was my first experience with the restaurant business. So starting out in my life, I started out in restaurant business.
Sure.
You know, fast, full service,
Right.
sit down, waitresses. I didn't start at the old barbecue pit.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay,
so I learned the restaurant.
learned a lot there.
Yeah, I learned a lot. Learned prep.
Right.
You know, expo,
front of house, back of house.
all that stuff. Yeah. So I did that for a little bit. And then my dad, about the time the West End started taking off, Holt Hickman was doing his deal in the stockyards. So he said, "Jim, we want you to come look at this." So my dad, he was in Billy Bob's already. He was he had
in the little restaurant
doing
there?
barbecue there.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was over in the stockyards already. So he goes down there and starts that one. Well, the next thing you know, the Sundance comes on board. He does that one. Well, then I graduated high school and started going to junior college and in Dallas Community Junior College. And then on the weekends, I would go work at the downtown Fort Worth store. So I did that.
But back then though, now it's different. It's a different deal. Back then, there were a lot of stuff down there.
No,
I mean that was a huge deal then.
So the big deal back then was the happy hour on Fridays.
Oh boy, I bet.
Oh boy, and you've been in that restaurant, you know. So you walk in the front door and it's like an L, and there's a back area, and then there's the front and the bar in between. Well, I mean, you couldn't come in to eat food until at least 7:38. Like you couldn't physically get in the door.
Yeah,
we'd have to rent a cop, because we had X amount of people in the building at one time, so we had to have a cop on staff.
Right.
I mean, you couldn't pour. I mean, they just pour those taps and just put in the schooners.
Cold mugs.
Yeah. Oh, it's schooners too.
Yeah,
you know, they're just schooners. And so that was a big deal. So I worked down there, and then I, kind of went back and forth.
What was your? We'll go back. What was your most memorable experience from Dallas? So, like when you were younger, what's your most memorable experience? Like what would you? Well, before you knocked it off the table.
I mean, there was a couple I can think of. One of them, I don't know if you. I mean, we can talk about it, but
I'm sure we can.
Okay,
do tell.
Okay. So I was a young kid that hadn't been around Dallas,
right.
And there was a waiter named Big Jim.
Yeah.
And Big Jim was a really nice guy. And one day Big Jim was not happy. Like he was real upset.
Was he really big?
Oh yeah, he's big.
Yeah.
Big guy. I believe maybe they call him Bears. Okay. He was a big
Bears fan.
No, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. He was a big guy. So he's real sad and upset. And I was like, what's wrong with Jim? And they said, well, he's broke he's had love problems.
Oh.
And I said, oh, okay. Well, anyway, about that time, a little guy comes in with roses and gives them to Jim, and they're better.
Okay.
And I was like, okay.
Okay.
That was like, and then, but that was the end of, I mean, you weren't around it growing up in the country.
Yeah, you weren't.
So that kind of introduced me to big city.
Right.
Second thing that I remember about that, there was another one. I am not going to tell that story. The other thing was we would stand out there in the evenings, and they would cruise the cars through there. And then there would be working girls.
Oh.
And then there would, and I remember the Rose guy. You remember Rose guys?
Rose guys were popular.
Rose guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a New Orleans thing, I think, that kind of came over.
Yeah.
And so the Rose guy would keep his roses in our cooler. And so he would stand on the corner and do the rose trick and just standing out there at night and the lights.
Watching all those things.
And all the, I mean, it was life. It was big city that this kid had never seen. And I guess it was a good time for me to see that, because I realized, hey, this world's full of a lot of different people, and you really got to just be your own self. And and however everybody, I mean, you can't hate on people.
No,
I mean, it's just what people are, so it really dropped me right in the middle of life. And I think it's helped me in life, just because I've, to be that way.
Cultures do help. Different experiences in life do help. That's why I say people get out and travel and eat and do things differently.
Right.
And they look at people differently. They look at other cultures differently.
Right.
I think it's an important thing, especially now.
Right.
Because so many cultures are intermingled.
Oh, yeah. And now there's so many people that are narrow-minded about culture and what, this guy, all he wants to do is, he's from this country and they don't do this. And you're like, what's wrong with him? That's what he does. I mean, it's his business, whatever. Yeah. So we're crazy Americans, but that was a big deal, and
don't forget Texans.
really really learned a lot. And so from there, I started working. I moved kind of back and forth to Fort Worth. I was in Fort Worth.
Yeah, you were at Sunday. You were at Sundance Square.
Right, Sundance Square.
But it wasn't Sundance that time.
Yeah, no, it was.
Okay.
It just happened.
Okay,
yeah,
just happened. Okay.
So we're in Sundance. I did all that, and then from there, I started working at the original store, the Azle Avenue store, and I did a lot of the buying. I started doing buying and stuff. So I was there until.
So I want to explain that store. That store is a neat store.
Yeah.
That store is an old grocery store, and you have a lot. If you go in this store,
right,
you have a lot. They have a lot of the old artifacts from back in the day. Different. What's all in there?
So it's just. It was a lot of it was just antiques that people would come up and say, "Hey, do y'all want to put it up at your store?" You know, and so kind of like Kincaid's has some old stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it just went to a different level.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. It looks really cool.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. And there's like old lollipop scales. There's a lot of the when the kind of the I guess the thing about it, Trey, was that when we got rid of something, like we were done with we got a new scale. Well, shit, just set it out there on the shelf.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of started.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, my grandfather did it. And my dad had started doing it. And then when I was there, I did the same thing. Like people would come in with stuff, you want to buy it, I'd buy it.
If you're a younger person going down there, it's neat because most young people never seen stuff like that. They go in there and look at all kinds of artifacts in the restaurant or the meat business.
Well, what I would get a lot of times is, oh my God, I watch American Pickers. I saw this stuff.
Oh, that's good.
Like,
That's
yeah. So that's how that. Anyway, but so the store was originally the original location was in the parking lot on the corner of Hannah. It was a house,
right?
And then in 52-ish, they built the one that's standing now.
Right, yeah.
So they still had it in the parking lot, built the other one, and then once it was done, they hauled that house off.
All the smokers built that time too?
No,
those were all added?
They were all added.
Okay.
So my dad started out with a basic brick smoker with a lid, like a stagnant stationary.
Right.
He started with that, and my great grandmother Mary kind of taught him about smoking meats because she was. She came in through Ellis Island, and my great-grandfather, Joe, that I'm named after, came through Galveston.
Oh, cool.
So when she came through Ellis Island, she started working for Jewish families in New York as a nanny. So she did a lot of cooking.
Oh, God.
And so with that, that's where kind of the brisket knowledge came because they would use it at holidays as a meat. And so she kind of that, and then I guess, she spoke 7 languages, and she was from
that time you had to.
Right.
Yeah, because the culture, everybody was coming in there. Right. And that's neat history coming through Ellis Island.
Right.
That's neat.
Yeah, so she came in that way and lived up in New York, and they both met over at the Russian church in Northside, and that's where they got married and all that. So long story short, that was the original smoker, and she kind of, the meat would get long, and then she would say, well, maybe, and I think taught my dad a little bit of how to do that.
Sure,
and that's where it came.
I think a lot of the smoking, and a lot of the pit masters tell me this now, because I do this, I've been doing this so much now. You have to develop your own techniques.
Right,
and you do things, you trial and error. Right. To develop your own stuff.
And if you look back at, Texas and Central Texas, a lot of the roots of the barbecue down there are all German-based.
Right.
So the Europeans were doing a lot of it, and that and they just obviously all came here.
Yeah.
So that's where it all kind of started. So he had that pit, and then from there he built a rotisserie pit.
That's one I saw.
Yeah, and then he went from there. He had, once he dialed in his rotisserie pit, he had a bunch of them. He made 2 more and 3 more, and now he's up to 5.
Yeah.
He's got 5 going and then 1 in storage, but that's all there at the Azle Avenue location. So it's the commissary, it's the smokehouse, it's everything. And then from there, all the products brought in, prepared, cooked, chilled, shipped out, and then reheated. Right. That's their business model. Right. Mine's different. So mine is cooked fresh the day of. So if you come down there today, you've had briskets that come off this morning, kind of routine, and so that's the thing that's different. We kind of always wanted to push towards, why don't we take briskets and deliver them to the store every day? Yeah. Well, economics of it didn't work out for them.
There's a lot of companies who they will cook briskets and cater them, deliver them, and I think it's the way it's handled, the way it's shipped is the way, because they still can taste good.
Right.
It's just how they're handled, how they're packaged,
how they're reheated,
and everything.
Yeah. So my dad, I guess, the business model that he enjoyed, that he looked at and developed his business of, was the Bill Miller.
Miller Smokehouse?
No, Bill Miller's Barbecue, which is a multi-chain unit in South Texas. So that's kind of where he started looking at stuff. But
did you started cooking there? Obviously.
Well, yeah, that's okay. So the story on that goes.
I got you off track.
I'm
all around, man.
So the story on that goes. I was doing all the buying. So I've worked in the restaurants. And then I went to there, and it was a deli, and I worked delis, and I did that, made sandwiches, and then I got into where I was doing the buying. So I was buying all the proteins, all the groceries every week.
And when he says proteins, if you don't know, he means all the beef product.
all the briskets, the chickens, the
pork,
hams, the ribs, everything. Yeah. So I started doing that, and the smokers were always there.
Yeah.
Well, then I meet my wife, Courtney. And we get married in 2001.
The one I thought was your daughter?
Right. Yeah. So we get married in 2001. And at that time, I told my dad I was working about 70 hours a week, which you know how the restaurant business is.
That was light.
Yeah, that was real light. Yeah. And so I said, hey, I think I want to step out for a little bit and do something else. I'm getting married. I really need to focus on my marriage. I don't want to go into a marriage not being home.
Right.
So he's
that's smart, by the way.
So he's like, okay, whatever. So I did.
Well, hang on, but your dad's from the old school, just like my dad, and granddad. Work.
That's it.
That's all that matters.
If you're going, if
they don't hang out, they're gonna hang out with you.
Right. And if you're gonna go out of town, you're gonna literally work until you get on the airplane.
Right.
Like, there's no, I need to pack. You know. So anyway, I did that, and when I stepped out, I started doing sales.
Right.
I started selling fabrication equipment. From there, I ended up working at a fence company doing commercial estimating.
Right.
And then from there, I met a real estate developer in Fort Worth, and I started selling real estate with him.
Right.
And so I did all that. And then once the real estate market kind of took a dump, that's when I went back to
your roots.
Yeah, back to Risky's. And I said, hey, if I'm going to, from working with, the guy I worked with and seeing how life was and how much you had to put into it, I figured if I'm going to do that, then I need to have my name on it.
Sure.
So from there, I went back to Risky's. Everything was great. Everything was good. We were kind of developing, doing new things, and growing the business.
Yeah. And you were at that time. You were working at the store, the old location, the original location.
Right. And I was floating around. When I came back, I managed the steakhouse. I cooked there too. Back when I got in trouble with the law, when I was 19,
right.
That's where I was a line cook there for about a year.
DWI's not getting in trouble with the law. It's like you robbed a bank or something. You didn't know.
Well, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
I've had DWI.
Yeah. Look out that window. Who had?
So they always get you at the worst time too. Have you been drinking? No.
How many did you have? I don't know, 2, 3.
That's a standard answer.
Right,
Two.
Two.
And you look at them telling they had 50.
Right. So this, you got to consider this is pre-Uber.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was pre-everything.
Yeah.
There weren't even taxis. Hardly taxis.
Hardly was cell phones. Yeah. So anyway, I'm working down at the main store, and things are going good, and there's family involved that's maybe not 100% Risky's that are involved in the business, and things kind of just started.
When you say 100% Risky's, you mean 100% family,
right? Family,
blood.
Yeah, they weren't family blood.
Right.
They were married in, and they were stepmother, child's husband, and anyway,
things happen in families and businesses. It just happens.
It's nothing.
Just what happens.
It's what happens. It's the politics of it.
Yeah.
And so things weren't getting better. I could see what was going to happen. I knew the hand was writing on the wall. Well, I told myself then, I said, well, I think it's a good opportunity here for Joe Risky to really brand himself. So I need to start getting involved. I wasn't really cooking barbecue then. I mean, I could cook steaks. I could cook steaks and some stuff, but I wasn't really barbecuing then. So
you weren't getting your feng shui on with the barbecue.
Right. So I thought to myself, I said, well, the restaurant business, that can, you can learn that.
Yeah.
And you can kind of fall around. You can hire somebody to run your restaurant,
if you trust them.
Right. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, well, but really, my dad started out. He was a barbecue man. He was a barbecue man, and I need to learn barbecue because I know that if I can barbecue and that guy can't barbecue, at the end of the day, when the shit hits the fan, we got to go back to barbecue.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody's still got to barbecue.
That's the product.
Right. That's what we were doing.
Yeah.
We're barbecue guys. So that's when I really went head over heels into it, and I really started learning. I knew a lot about meat from buying it, but I didn't know a whole lot. My brother's a big meat guy. He runs a big meat purveyor in Dallas. He's the president of that, and we always nicknamed him the meat genius. You know,
meat genius.
Yeah. So
hey, I'm gonna stop you right there.
Okay.
We're gonna take a break here just for a few minutes because these guys like to pay bills. They're capitalists. I don't know what's going on with them, but they like to pay bills. We'll see y'all back in just a few minutes. We're going to finish our interview with Joe. So come back or hang on. See you in a minute. Bye.
Dr. Ken Brown here, host of Gut Check Project with my co-host Eric Rieger. Eric, we've been seeing Mojo guys over there and over here at Spoony talk about Atrantil for bloating. I've seen in my practice that Atrantil is a whole lot more than just a bloating product.
Yes, it does a whole lot more than just fix bloating because of the polyphenols that you find in Atrantil.
You're exactly right. The polyphenols are those molecules that we find in the Mediterranean diet. It makes vegetables and fruits very colorful. What are some of the things that these polyphenols do, Eric?
These polyphenols can actually stop inflammation. They can help you have more energy. They can help you with anti-aging. And polyphenols are great for athletes.
It sounds like it's going to help a whole lot more people than just bloating. Tell me how everybody should be taking Atrantil.
If you want to dose Atrantil, it's 2 capsules 3 times a day, basically with your meals. But if you aren't bloated and you just want that polyphenol intake every day, 2 to 3 capsules a day will work for you.
Go to lovemytummy.com/Spoony.
It looks like you're losing.
I am.
Are you losing weight?
I am losing. I've lost about 10 pounds.
How are you doing it?
Funny name, but I've done it with Riduzone. RADUzone.com, and the stuff works. It's, you get into all that, the molecule this and the found in that. All I can tell you is it makes you feel full, and it keeps your mind off of wanting to overeat.
And also boosts your metabolism,
Yes,
so you're
it does.
burning more.
Yeah, it
Try
does.
it today. It's going to work for you like it's worked for Brad and countless other people. Riduzone.com. RIDUzone.com.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month, based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Hey, everybody, we are back for another day, another 30 minutes with Joe Risky of Joe Risky's Crab Barbecue. He doesn't say actually crab. He calls it Joe Risky Barbecue. I like to say craft because I think craft puts a special spin on a barbecue because it's all hand done and fresh. And so we're going to get right back to it with Joe. So, all right, Joe. So we were talking about where we left off. You were kind of doing
Yeah, so I started to realize that barbecue was going to be
right
what I needed to do. So I started, learning meats, different cuts, different grades, where they were located on the cow. Kind of went through that routine, and then I decided to get involved more with cooking hands-on. I would go up there and load the pits. I would do some other stuff and kind of just,
try to find your technique.
Just figure out what was going on here. I mean, we're putting 90 briskets in this machine. We come back the next day and we take them out. You know, like what's going on here?
But you had to rub those briskets.
Right.
It's not just throwing them in there.
Right. And see, that was the thing is way Risky's operates. I mean, the volume that they're cooking they're cooking for 6 locations.
Right.
So it was more of a machine.
Right.
It was more like the General Motor plant. I mean, the briskets
Consistency.
the briskets come in on the forklift on the boxes.
Yeah.
We peel them out, put them in a tote, roll them down there. They go in the pit. Turn it on, go. We put wood on at 7. Next morning, I mean, it's just a cycle. It's a cycle, but it's like you're desensitized from it.
Right.
So I got involved with Texas A&M and Foodways of Texas. They do barbecue camps twice a year.
Right.
And so
explain real quick. Explain what a barbecue camp is.
So
it's a neat deal.
Yeah. So Foodways of Texas is a program out of University of Austin, UT, that is preserving the cooking techniques of Texas.
Right.
And so they put on a barbecue camp with the University of A&M and the Meat and Science Center.
2 times a year.
2 times a year. They do a brisket camp in January
Right.
and then a full-on barbecue camp in June.
Now, is this available to anybody?
What's that?
Is this camp available to anybody?
No, you've got to go on the Foodways website, become a member, and then you enter a lottery.
Okay.
And there's 75. They let 75 in now. They might moved it up to 100, but there's usually about a couple, 3,000-4,000 people trying to get in 75 spots.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and so it's a pretty good ticket if you get it.
Yeah.
So I got invited to come down. There's a gentleman here in Fort Worth, Dr. Nick. He's a chuck wagon guy, meat science guy. He approached me and said, "Hey, I'm doing a deal for A&M on moisture content of wood."
Right.
And so I said, "Okay." So he comes up to the shop, and we got there and we split wood. I show him this one's green, this one's not, this one's seasoned, and he does the moisture content. So
wait, hang on. Tell everybody the reason you do that is because you use a lot of wood.
Right. So we would have 100 cords on lot.
Right.
We'd have 100 cords at a time, 50 of them green, 50 of them seasoned. Right. And the theory was once you went to that 50, the other 50 was green, and you're just constantly feeding the machine. So greenwood, I think we established it had about 30% moisture content in it, and seasoned wood had about 16%.
Yeah. Now, so if you happen to use a wet wood, it's different.
Well, yeah, and it'll actually, there's two things. It'll burn longer, but it'll burn cooler,
right? Because
the moisture in the wood's cooling down the fire.
Okay.
Some people say it'll give it a more of a sooty taste. Maybe, if it was like we cut it today and cooked it. But I mean, green wood in the business, I use a little bit of green wood when I get it on my overnight. Because it'll burn longer, burn a little cooler, So
now, and the dry wood, it burns hotter, right?
Yeah, and it's also sized wood. So small wood burns hot and fast. Big wood burns slow and long.
Okay.
So that you gotta account for all that when you're feeding your fire. So he got me involved in the A&M deal by doing the study, and by that I got they invited me to come down to camp and sit on the wood and smoke panel.
Right.
And so I went down there, and I remember I was working at Risky's, and I went down there, and my dad was like, well, don't go down there and say anything stupid, Like, okay. So I get down there, and growing up, and I'll just tell you, my dad looked at other barbecue restaurants as the enemy.
Yeah,
I mean, and other restaurants too. Yeah. I mean, there was several nights I'd been in the car and he'd drive to other restaurants to see if they're busy and get pissed off when they were.
Yeah.
And so it was, that's the mentality I grew up thinking. So once I got down to A&M and met all these other pit masters, met Aaron Franklin, Russell Wiggles, John Brotherington, and all these guys,
celebrity pit masters,
right? And all these, all these guys. It was crazy that we all had so much in common, and then there was no holding back. There was no, let me tell you what I do. What do you do? And I remember sitting in the back of Dr. Sable's. Yeah, sitting in the back of Dr. Sable's backyard, and we're all sitting there drinking beers, hanging out, and it was just like, wow. And it became a weird deal for me to know that we're all in the same boat.
Right.
We're doing this. Yeah, I got my shop, you got your shop, but we're together on this deal. What are you paying? What do you think?
The funny thing is, it all tastes different.
Right.
It's
right.
all,
yeah.
But it all tastes because everybody has their own techniques.
Yeah, if you want to do that, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Why? And so I started coming back from those events and stuff, and I would start cooking the style that maybe Russell did or the style that maybe Franklin did. And my dad would get all pissed off. He'd be all hot ass about it. He'd say, "Well, you're changing everything," and all this shit. And he didn't understand. I had a sales background, and when in sales, the first thing you do is you go get your competition stuff, you use it, and you see what it's about.
Right.
Not just so you can dog it,
right?
But just to know what you're up
against. You can
against.
make yours better and see what you're up against.
Or say, hey, you're probably running into this problem with that product.
Right.
Let me tell you what I can do for you.
Yeah.
And so I tried to explain that to him, and he had no idea. He thinks I'm trying to change everything. So that's where it kind of really started. And I really started cooking and the issues, and I started really cooking on my own and learning how to do stuff. And then,
was that when you told me you were learning different? It was like 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah,
and you started it. Yeah, you didn't do it, but you started thinking about it.
Right. I started thinking, I don't know, maybe I want to do something on my own. Maybe I want to do something different.
Yeah.
And so we moved along, and next thing you know, I did that pop-up. And my thought on that
was your first pop-up?
Yeah, that was my first pop-up.
I love that. That was great. that was fun. Those were good pictures, too.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I still use them today.
Yeah, I see you do. Yeah.
So it was super fun, super cool, but I was wanting to see if my name would draw people instead of people showing up going, oh, it's not Risky's.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's Joe Risky about? Well, so I did it, and
you sold it out.
Yeah, it was great, and I had a good time and all that, and well, that flew all over my dad. I mean, it pissed him off. He thought that you can't do that. You work for Risky's Barbecue, and I kept telling him, no, you're looking at it wrong.
Yeah,
this is a great platform to try new things.
Right.
We don't have to run it in a restaurant. We can do it special. We can charge a little bit, right?
Well, because it's a different. You can charge it because it's a superior product,
right. But we can, if we want to run a new product and we want to see what the people think, people,
test market,
people that are paying,
test kitchen,
right. So it's
you get paid for,
right. And so I was like, and I said, he's like, you can't. I said, look, here's the bottom line: is I had a party and I cooked at it and I invited all my friends, but I charged them. I mean, it wasn't. This wasn't a public deal. I'm not competing against Risky's Barbecue. The sales at the restaurant did not drop that evening. I mean, it had nothing to do with it. And he wouldn't see it, and that became the beginning of the end. And it just got to the point where it was kind of like, whatever. There was some other issues, and there was finally I said, you know what? My wife she's doing well at her business. I'm young to most, and I was like, I could either do this.
Joe, everybody's young. You're young at heart, you're young.
Yeah, that's right. I said I could either do this when I'm 40 or I can do it when I'm 50, and I don't think it's a good run doing it at my 50. I'd rather be past this little hurdle. So
what, are you dogging on 50-year-olds?
No. I just want to enjoy life at 50. I know. So
I've been enjoying life since 1966, Joe.
There you go. So the door opens. It's like the girlfriend that you're dating, but you really didn't like.
Yeah.
But you really didn't have another option. So the door opened, and I said, screw it. Yeah. I'm stepping through it. So I stepped through it, and then
it was an opportunity came available.
Right. And so I said, you know what? Let's do it. I walked away.
That's when Joe Risky's Barbecue was born.
Right.
Now, I'm going to give the backstory is this thing was done. He did pop-ups. And he's got a great new location. He got a brand new building behind Wild Acre Brewery, which I love. Wild Acre Brewery, Larry Anthony. Who's other?
John Pritchett's the owner, and Bruce Conti's actually involved in it too. Bruce, he's the landlord, and he's involved. There's some other guys, but Larry too. Yeah.
But he's got a great. The brewery's beautiful. It's in the old ranch style beans. If you've never been over there, you need to go. The whole area is really cool.
Right.
Joe's building is cool, and you can drink, and you can have great barbecue. You can have fresh barbecue.
Right.
Fresh craft barbecue.
That's right.
And fresh beer.
Right.
Both made on site. That's pretty. That's pretty.
And that's the cool thing about it. It's like it's an industrial facility. We're making beer and we're cooking barbecue, and that's a big thing. It's cooked on site. And a lot of people are shocked by that. They're like, "Where was this? Was this prepared here?" Yeah, I'll take you in the smoke room. And like, "Oh wow," So
because it's got a total different. And here's if people go, and this is why I say craft barbecue.
Right.
I started saying this 2 years ago, and that is I think it's really taken off because there's a huge difference in a guy pitmaster who sits there and does all his stuff versus somebody pumping out stuff for 5 locations or 3 or even 2.
Right.
It's just a totally different concept.
Well, and a lot of the young up and coming pitmasters that we're seeing all over Fort Worth, Texas, wherever, they're influenced by the old school guys.
Right.
But the old school guys were commodity guys, bought cheap.
Right.
Let's cook it slow and make it good.
Yeah.
Well, that was all fine and dandy.
Right.
Until now, everybody wants to know, where's it from?
Right.
How was it
they feeding it?
What are they feeding it? How was it raised? Does it ever have an antibiotic?
Was it whipped?
Right. Was it ever a pet? So
hey, listen to me. That's a true thing. Was it a pet? That's a huge thing because now they see all these people raising these animals, and was it a pet? It's funny.
Right. So all that starts playing into it. So now they're like, we want to be old school cool, but we're doing it a new way.
Right.
And so when I got out of the Risky's Barbecue and the Joe Risky's, the first thing I had to learn was get my mind off of mass producing stuff.
Right.
I had to go from instead of running it down the assembly line to hand building a car. I mean, it was a big change, and I'm still learning on that. I'm still learning. I do have the volume. I know the volume. I can do caterings. I mean, I know how to handle all that and cook up for that and do all that. But now I'm learning just how to keep everything on point. Right. Day in and day out when I'm open. Yeah, consistency. I got to think that I got to look at it like Daniel Vaughn could come today.
Right. So Daniel Vaughn's Texas Monthly. Pretty soon there'll be if Trey Chapman can come today.
Right. Well, Trey, I've been hitting on pretty good cylinders when you show up. So yeah.
So Joe, take us through the whole process real quick.
Okay.
You don't have to be quick, but we got quite a bit of time.
Right.
Clock says we do.
Yeah.
So take me through the process of from start to finish when you get your brisket.
Okay.
How it comes in, what you do with it, how you do it.
Okay, so product comes in, and I'm a certified Angus beef.
Right.
Prime is all I use on my brisket. That product comes in from Dallas. It's all Midwest beef. It's sourced from the Midwest.
Right.
I make sure there's about 3 plants I pull from. One, actually, I really like, National Beef.
Right.
So those briskets come in. I usually today I'm going to, obviously cook for tomorrow.
Right.
So
you put it on for today and then you cook for it, but it's fresh in the morning. Yeah.
I'll leave here, go do lunch, do our deal, whatever. And then about 2:00 in the afternoon, I'll pull those briskets out, peel them out of the plastic, set them on the table, and I'll trim them.
Right.
So on a brisket, you're going
to fix tell me. Okay, go ahead.
On a brisket, you got a high side and a low side. When you're looking at it from the top, it kind of goes like, it slopes over. Well, that low side is what I trim on. I trim on the top of that low side. The goal is to have a quarter inch of fat.
Okay.
All the way around.
Okay.
So therefore, when I cut that brisket, it's meat. By then it's maybe an eighth of fat because it's rendered down, then the bark. So when you eat that barbecue, you're getting all that in it. Right. You're getting meat, fat, bark. Because when you
flavor profile.
Yeah, when you don't trim it, you'll get a big old piece of fat, and you got to trim that off because people freak out, and you don't get it.
My girlfriend and daughter both hate that. They like it the way you're talking about. They don't like getting all that fat in there. They're more kind of a lean with not real lean and dry, but just flavorful.
Right. So you got to have the bark, you got to have the fat, and you got to have the meat in the bite.
Right.
So that's why you trim. Right. And so we didn't trim at Risky's. Never did, because we cook so much. You couldn't. I mean, you'd have to have full-time butchers. Yeah. So
you
that's
could. You just eat into the profit.
Right. Yeah. So I trim, and then on the bottom side of the brisket, on one side of it, it's where the decal was attached. It's a hard fat. And it's a hard fat like this table, and it won't render down. It won't do anything.
It's no good for you.
And so I cut it out because it relieves that brisket and will lay that brisket out a little flatter.
Okay.
And so
which gives it a more even cooking ability.
Right.
Okay.
And it just anytime you got a rise in that meat, that's where the smoke and the heat's going to catch. Yeah. And so
it won't flow evenly.
Right. And that's a Franklin deal. He's all about aerodynamics. Franklin. Everybody asks me, "What do you think about Franklin?" Franklin's a great guy. His food's awesome, and he just put the words we knew on paper. Yeah. Like oh yeah, you're right. Aerodynamic. You're right.
I'll tell you what Todd David said over at Cadillac Barbecue. I went to one of his seminars. He has these every once a month. He has these seminars.
Yeah, he's having one tomorrow, I think, or Saturday. Yeah.
And they're really neat. And I went and I think I put him on social media live, which is really cool. He's like, whoa, wait, because he said some things. But it was really cool because he said, he went to the Franklin deal. And he said. What Franklin told was, do it your way. So he said, what the biggest thing is, because everybody has, he has a thing when he starts. He says, I'm going to tell you what. Don't ask me. Don't ask me how that, because that's all you're going to do. I'm going to tell you how I do it.
Right.
You're going to have to develop your own technique.
Right.
Because what I do is not going to work for you.
Right. And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So once we got her trimmed, I rub it. Well, on the rub, that's another deal. At Risky's, I called it chicken frying. They would stick it in something and completely cover it with rub, which is fine. Whatever. I don't.
Yeah.
I sprinkle it on, and then I just rub the top and the bottom. I don't even do the sides.
Well, because there's no reason, because it doesn't. No, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the rub that I use, my personal blend, is not Risky's. It's my own.
Sure.
And to me, it's got enough uppercut that it doesn't need to be all the way around it. So I put that on. I put it on. So we got a fire built, we got coals burned down, and we're adding wood, and we put them on, and I run it at about at the top of the pit, I run it at about 275. So in the middle, it's probably 250, and at the bottom, it's 225. Rotisserie, I'm a rotisserie guy, and so I put them on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So rotisserie means people who aren't watching us on TV and are listening, but rotisserie just goes around
and it's self-based.
It's
self-basting. It's self-basting because it's
dripping. It's dripping down as it goes around.
So I'm not spritzing. You know, you see a lot of guys that have the propane tanks. They're spritzing because they're not getting any moisture on top of that brisket. I don't have to spritz. But it's what I grew up cooking. What we all. That's what works for you. That's what us Riskies have cooked.
It's your technique.
That's right. That's what we use. So I put them on, say 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I leave, go home, and then I get back up there around 5 in the morning. And
that's lunchtime for me.
So I get up there about 5 in the morning, and I've worked the fire back up, and then usually about 9 o'clock I'll wrap them.
Okay.
And I wrap them in butcher paper. And
here's the difference. I see explain to people why you wrap in butcher paper and not plastic. Tell me what happens.
Butcher paper will absorb a little bit of the grease. It's pretty much like if you got a wet rag and put it on it.
Right.
And it just holds the moisture. It makes that bark really. It wakes that bark up,
I think so too.
And now if you didn't wrap it, that bark would be real crispy, and that's great. But I think when you wrap it and you get it wrapped in there and it holds in that paper, it just makes it so much better. Now, I will tell you, you can't take a cooked brisket, like say you were going to reheat one, and wrap it in raw paper that doesn't have any grease on it. If you heat it in that, it'll wick all the moisture out and you'll have dry. So you got to put the paper on when that brisket starts to purge its liquid and catch it and then hold it. And so I do that, and then say 11 o'clock, usually 10 o'clock, I pull, it doesn't matter, Trey, we can look at 50 briskets and I'll say that one's going to finish first. It doesn't. It doesn't. This one did, and you're like, no way. It would be a good gambling sport.
Betting on the briskets.
Betting on the briskets. So we usually got 1 or 2 coming off, and they're ready. And then I like to rest them, and that's the most important. I think out of all I told you, the most important part is the resting period. And it comes off. It's 200 degrees. That brisket is. Let it work itself back down. When it gets right down to about 150, 140, it's good to go. But if it's 180, 170, it just does. It's good, but it's not as good as 140 brisket. I don't know why. Whatever. But all that moisture in that paper is getting wicked back in.
Sure.
It's kind of like it's like I burn my finger, right? You burn your finger and you're like, oh crap, and it's all shriveled and tight, and you're like, well, an hour later you got a big old blister,
right?
Well, because it pushed all the moisture out, and then it drawed itself back, and when it drawed itself back, it drawed back more than it pushed out,
right?
That's the purpose of letting it rest.
Okay.
In a nutshell. Yeah. So that's why you rest steaks.
I think, me, and I'm a big food guy. Right. I always have been. I think it's so cool when take that brisket out and it's got all that grease on that paper.
Right.
And you're going to wrap it. I just think that looks so delicious.
Right.
It's very tantalizing.
Right.
It would make a fantastic national commercial, but they've never done it before.
No.
But
I mean, when I cut that paper and I take that brisket out and pick it up, and that brisket's just, it's like a wet, in the juice.
Oh, it's
and
sexy.
It's sexy. It is. I'm telling you. Yeah. And so I use white butcher paper, non-wax.
Right.
Other guys use the peach paper. I've used.
Hey, well, hang on. What's peach? Peach is the color.
Is the color?
I see a lot of that.
But let's see. White is they've dyed it to make it white.
Okay.
The peach is the natural state of the pulp.
Yeah, and I think it's right because I unwrapped one at Lockhart the other day, and it was they put my order in that.
Yeah,
and when I unwrapped it was that color. Yeah.
So, and then I've actually used craft paper, which is brown craft paper, like you would wrap gifts with or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like the white butcher paper. For one, I wanted to be a little different.
All right.
Everybody else is, you gotta have something.
You gotta
have something. And we always had white butcher paper at the main store. That's what we always used. So I went white butcher paper, but when I use that craft paper, what was really cool is you take that hot brisket, you throw it in that craft paper, and you fold it over and start wrapping it up. Well, you know what it smelled like to me?
What?
smell like about 1980 Taco Bell. Remember, you know, they'd use those paper sacks, and you'd get that taco.
Yeah, that was a white paper sack.
Right, and it was all anyway. That's
back before Taco Bell was Taco Bell. That's a different story.
That's right. We were talking about Taco Bell.
Taco Bell back then is like Taco Casa is now.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah, and the smell of so
delicious.
Yeah,
deliciousness.
Yeah, and so something about the paper, the grease getting into it, the meat. I mean, it just makes it right. And then when I cut them out of there and go to serve it, the aroma, it really. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
So that's a technique that they didn't do at Risky's.
Yeah.
That's all I developed it. I developed it.
I know you did. Yeah.
And then on my turkeys, I use a real turkey breast. I don't use a deli turkey, like you get. It's a real turkey breast. My pork ribs, I sourced all my stuff out of North Carolina from Cheshire Pork. Hello, Cheshire Pork.
Cheshire Pork.
Yeah, and I'm a distributor rep for them part time too. But I use all their. It's going great. It's going great. You know, that's the cool thing. Everybody goes, well, you know, you're only open 3 days a week. What are you doing the rest of the time?
Selling pork.
Well, I'm selling pork. And it's like the crazy thing is like I guess I'm like kind of like you. I'm at my shop during 3 days a week or 4 days a week preparing, and then the rest of the time I was been at the back of the mansion. I'm over at the mansion. I'm at the Petroleum Club. I mean, where all these restaurants.
But you know what? That too also it keeps you. It also keeps you viable in the market place too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Talking to everybody, keeping your finger on the pulse, baby.
And I mean, when you're in those kitchens the time of day that I am, when their chefs are getting ready and stuff. You learn a lot. You see things they do, and it's just cool to. And hey, when they hear that I'm a barbecue guy. That's the first thing I want to talk about. What about those? How da.
Yeah.
And so it's been really cool, and that's been a pretty cool deal.
John Teaser was on the show last week, and the one cool thing, and we were talking about barbecue just for a minute, and he said his friend's got that new barbecue place in New York that's so popular, so big.
Billy's. And, hometown barbecue.
Yeah, and he said people want to fluff off. Pit masters or craft barbecue guys. He said it's a technique. It's a lot of work. He said it's something you got to learn. He said it's not easy. So
I'll tell you a story on Billy Dunnigan. I can't think of his last name. Billy. He's the guy. He's a Yeti guy. Vest.
Yeah.
So Jess Prowse, a friend of mine, the hardcore carnivore.
Yeah.
She came to visit me at the main store, and she brought Billy with him, and then brought another guy, Izzy. That's he's a kosher pitmaster.
Okay.
And that's pretty cool. All his stuff is kosher. He's out of New York too.
That's cool.
Well, they came and visit me, and they took a look at the store and whatever. And Billy, I could tell
when they were building their store.
No. This is at the main store.
I know, but when they were before they constructed
he might have been open. Okay. I don't know, but anyway, he comes over there, and I could tell he was kind of put off because I don't know. He just seemed like he was a little put off.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
you got that put off vibe.
Yeah. So me and Jess were talking, whatever, and he pops off and says, do you ever stay up all night concerned, worried that your briskets aren't going to be good the next day, da-da-da-da-da. Like, I guess trying to downplay the fact that we had it down to science, it was a machine.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't want to tell him, hey, Billy, what about if you got to get 30,000 pounds of beef frizz by next week and no one's got them? Like everybody's got their worries.
Right.
But now that I'm on my own.
Yeah, you see what he's talking about.
I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, I do worry about that. When I pull up to my shop at 5 a.m, the conveyor, the belt, the chain.
Right? You know what that is,
yeah,
right?
the chain
but you know what that is? That's passion.
Is it?
It's passion for what you're doing.
Well, then that's what I got. Yeah. When I get out of my truck and I turn that old Dodge pickup off, first thing I'm listening for is that chain slapping on that rotisserie to know it's turning.
It's turning, yeah.
If it ain't turning, oh shit. Yeah. So,
it's gonna be a bad day at Risky's Barbecue. Joe Risky's Barbecue.
Okay,
So anyway, real quick, we've got a little bit of time left.
Okay.
You do sides. I love your Pitmaster mac and cheese.
Right.
And what else? What other sides?
I do a green chili cheese hominy.
You're going to have that on ABC. We're doing a show for ABC next month. You're going to have that on there.
I'm going to have that, and then I do butter beans with homemade cornbread, and then I do cornbread just in general. I do
everything's fresh, by the way.
Right. And then I do a new deal I've been doing with the butter beans. I call them brisket beans. might have taught over at Cadillac.
No, I haven't had them here. Are they good?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's
it's
just pinto beans. They're real good. I mean, what are you talking about? So they're pinto beans, and I cook them with a butt of a brisket in there. And then once the beans are done, I take the brisket and chop it up and throw it back in.
Oh, boy.
I mean, they're good. You know, they got flavor. Oh, they're good. So that, and then I'm working on some new stuff.
Y'all call them Joe Risky's sexy beans.
Yeah, there you go. I'm working on some new stuff. I'm really focusing a little bit on some pork because I just don't think people
utilize all the pork.
Here, let me tell you real quick. So you got all these new barbecue guys in town, and everybody's trying to do barbecue with a Tex-Mex deal, right?
Right.
Am I Tex-Mex?
No.
Did I look like Tex? No.
I think Tex-Mex. It's a sticky wicket.
Yeah, it's great. Whatever, that's fine. I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I'll go eat with you down there. But I'm saying I'm not that. I can't be that. So that's why I'm trying to bring in different regions of the country and their barbecue. So I'm really focusing on pork.
Cool.
And I want to bring in pork. So
all right, y'all need to get to Joe Risky's barbecue, and that's behind. Wild Acre Brewing. Yeah. And it's at joerisky.com.
It's Joe Risky's barbecue, and it's JoeRisky.
Yeah, you gotta put the C in there.
Yeah, S, then BARBEQUE. And it's, but you can find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but mostly check me out on Instagram and Facebook. I don't do a lot of tweets.
Cool. So you can find him there. You can find me at Trey's Chowdown Live, or you can just go to Trey's Chowdown, and it has all my sites to it. This weekend we'll be at Kaboo. It starts today at Jerry World. It takes up the whole Jerry World, everything outside and everything inside. 6 stages. We have culinary events. We have comedy. We've got music. Hey, they've even got a big heated swim pool with private cabanas out there.
Hey,
it is
sign
crazy.
Me up. Yeah.
Everybody's asking what the word Kaboo means. I think it means money right now. That's what it means.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's the biggest experience food culinary company to ever hit this part of Texas.
Really?
So yeah, we're real excited.
Well,
and then look us up on Spoony, spoony.com, Spoony anything, and we'll be here every Friday. We'll be here next week. Okay. And we'll see y'all again on Friday.
I appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
thank you, brother.
I thank you.
Yes,
sir. It was good times.
See y'all next week. Great.